Hello, everyone, and welcome to UBS Trending. I'm Anthony Pastore. There are so many questions that we all have about the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Most notably, you hear this a lot. Why did Putin make these particular choices? What is his potential end game? What happens if he succeeds? And even more importantly, what happens if he is defeated? So I want to talk about that right now with Frank Kelly, founder and managing partner of Fulcrum Macro Advisors, LLC, and senior political strategist for DWS. Frank, really nice to have you join us. A tough topic to be chatting about today, but there are a lot of questions, so thanks for joining me.
Great to be here. Great to see you again.
Thanks, Frank. So let me start with this. First of all, our thoughts always go out to the people of Ukraine first and foremost as they are suffering through this horrific crisis. But I have a lot of questions for you, which, of course, Frank, we may not be able to get to all of them today, as there are so many questions, and even more questions, there are unknowns about what's going on. So the first thing is first, and I'm sure you've been asked this before, what do you think is the end game for Putin, and how can he survive this knowing that the world at large is completely against his actions that he and the armed forces of Russia have been taking against the people of Ukraine?
This is the big question, right? Why now? Why Ukraine? What was the bigger plan here? Nobody knows. I'm reminded of something that former President George W. Bush said about him. Everybody used to make fun of him about saying, I looked into his soul and I saw the man. But he also said once, and I had this conversation with him once, about Putin, he's all tactics and no strategy. And that's sort of playing out here, right? It's all tactics of invasion, that somehow we're going to reunite Ukraine, which is really part of Russia and should always be there. That's reason number one. Number two, it's to build this giant buffer between Russia and NATO, which he perceives as a threat, as if NATO was going to invade. One point I would simply make, if somewhere in God and his creation had put mountain ranges across Ukraine, we wouldn't have this, but it's just straight, flat, huge grain harvesting areas that he just feels completely vulnerable. And how he gets out of this, I don't know.
Yeah, it's really, and it's such a, for those of us who are watching this story unfold every day, on the outsides of it, not certainly for the people that are sitting in Ukraine and the Russian people, there are so many questions about this, especially about his state of mind. So this may be impossible to answer, Frank, knowing that we don't really know much, but how do you think this ends? Do you see Putin retreating if he feels like he's not winning, or would that push him to maybe take more drastic measures? We've heard the word nuclear come out of his mouth, which of course scares everyone around the globe, because with somebody who we don't really understand their state of mind, anything is possible here.
Right. This is clearly something going on, right? There's the speculation, does he have cancer? And does he have roid rage because he's on steroids because of cancer? Has he lost his mind? We know he's a germaphobe. That has played out in these bizarre photographs of him with other foreign leaders with these 50-foot long tables where he's sitting on other ends. So, who knows what's going on there? I think clearly one of the big things here is he had no idea how bad the state of the Russian military was. I think it's safe to say that he thought he could easily take Ukraine and then probably push into Moldova as well as Georgia. Georgia much closer to NATO membership. And remember, in 2008, he did this with a portion of Georgia. But that has all failed. And we're looking at a military that is one of the largest in the world, just being hammered by local farmers picking up guns, as well as the Ukrainian military fighting heroically. I think this shows the level of decay within the government that has gone so deeply into the Russian military, which is a whole different issue, right? I think there's just a corruption issue here that we're beginning to understand among his general staff, all of his generals, who have been taking money on the side for years, selling illicit weapons on the side, taking bribes, etc. Just the corrosiveness of that system, and that has created this situation. To which now, how does he get out? I think you raise the issue when you raise the issue of nuclear weapons. This is something that's very, very scary. And in talking to officials here in Washington who are deeply engaged in this, there is a concern he uses tactical nuclear weapons on a city to try and force the surrender of Ukraine. There is very deep concern that he starts using biological or chemical weapons to start clearing out cities that are like Kiev, that are holding off so valiantly here. So I think anything is possible at this point. He is, as we all know, it's the bear is the symbol of Russia. He is the quintessential wounded bear in the corner. And that is sometimes the most dangerous, usually the most dangerous of all bears.
Yeah. Yeah, I've also seen those pictures. I think we all have of him sitting at the table, very far away from anybody there. He might also be afraid of maybe, you know, there's been a lot of history of folks in Russian politics being poisoned. He might be fearful that some, you know, of his closest aides might disagree with him. Obviously, we don't know what's going on inside there. But I have to ask you about NATO, Frank. And really, it's a two-part question. We saw, first of all, over the weekend that Russian airstrikes hit a large military base about 16 kilometers from the border of Poland, which, of course, is a NATO country. Does it seem like Putin and his army are trying to provoke NATO? And if that's the case, where does NATO actually step in here? And when do the allies decide on a direct military response to counter this aggression?
Well, I think that if he were to actually engage militarily with any NATO country, right? If he starts lobbing missiles into Poland or Romania or doing something like that, then the answer is to his state of mind, yes, he's insane. And I say that because remember, NATO is combined 5 times the size of the Russian military. So the only thing that he's got at that point is tactical nuclear weapons. I really don't think that he wants to engage with NATO. I think he is threatening as much as he can. And I think also that him taking out this base inside the Ukrainian border, it goes to show how effective the NATO supply of weaponry has been in defeating the Russian military. So it was, I think it's not to be, I hate to sound cavalier, and I don't mean to be, but it's to be expected that he would assault that. And you will see other strikes, I predict, close to just inside the Ukrainian border as he tries to cut off these sophisticated weaponry that's coming in. And it's just eviscerating his military. You're looking at 12,000 dead Russian soldiers already. What are we, a month into this? They're talking 500 main battle tanks have been destroyed. The numbers are astronomical. So he's getting desperate here.
Yeah, it certainly seems so. And as we've all painfully seen that there have been civilians who have been injured and killed, women and children. It's just horrific humanitarian crisis. And of course, we see the refugee crisis is also something that the world is stepping in to pick up and figure out how to help these people who are getting pushed out of Ukraine. So I'm going to wrap it up with you with 2 questions, Frank. First of all, the first question is, if Ukraine does fall to Russia, do you think that first of all, the sanctions by the Western countries, do you think that those would remain in place indefinitely? And how do you think that might impact the global economy?
I think this is really the important point, particularly I would argue for all my friends there in UBS watching this. The sanctions aren't coming off until Putin's gone and senior leadership is gone. If Putin were to evacuate his troops and declare victory and say, okay, we're done, and then go back to the old battle lines, the sanctions aren't coming off. And I don't think they're coming off for the foreseeable future, being years, right? If he does conquer Ukraine, God forbid, you will see that battle continue. I think it's very clear that we'll see a sustained guerrilla movement here, which will cost Russia in terms of blood and treasure for years to come. But again, the sanctions aren't coming off. They're only going to get tighter. So he has really gotten himself into a bad place here. But I think, again, this is the important things from the markets to understand. This isn't going to be over in a month, 6 months, and I would predict a year or two. We're going to see these prolonged sanctions for a very long, extended period of time.
Right. Yeah, and as you said in the beginning, when former President George W. Bush said he's tactical and not strategic, you can just really see, as we're talking here, this is a lose-lose for Putin and Russia, no matter what the outcome at the end of the day. But here's the last question, and here's the outcome we all hope happens. If Ukraine wins and pushes Russia back, what then happens to Putin and, of course, his inner circle, and even the country of Russia as a whole? Where do they stand after this?
So this is the big question I'm getting quite a bit of, and I've drilled into this. Putin is seen to having an inner circle of somewhere between 5 to 8 guys that he really trusts. Military, former KGB guys who are now FSB, 1 or 2 oligarchs. That's who he's listening to. That's who he trusts, if he trusts anybody. There's a wider circle, secondary circle, which are more oligarchs, maybe some old colleagues from the military, KGB guys. They don't have much power, right? And they're the dangerous ones because they're the ones who are losing everything. The last thing I would say is think of it this way, and I alluded to this earlier. You've got a general staff, all these generals who are now being named, and very clearly they will be charged, indicted in the International Criminal Court as war criminals. Many of these guys have been taking bribes. They have been looting the military, selling, they here and there, they're selling AK-47s to who knows what group around the world for money. That money is being frozen. I call them the sub-oligarchs. They're not the big guys with the boats, but they've got tens of millions. They can never leave Russia again. They can never go to Paris or London or Rome for the weekend and spend their money. Their money's gone, and if they go, they'll be arrested. So you've got an entire general staff who are now trapped. Their life, as they had hoped for, is over. At what point do they turn on Putin? I think that's a very real risk, right? Because they're going to all want to cut deals for the West so that they're not prosecuted. So that's something to watch there as well.
Absolutely, and I think Putin is aware of that himself. As we said, probably why he sits about 50 feet away from every single person that he comes in contact with, even his closest aides. Frank, thank you so much. Obviously, this is a very fluid situation where there could be a news headline or some change of direction at any moment. But for now, this is a really, really helpful conversation, Frank. Thank you so much for all of your insights, and it's always good to see you, my friend. See you soon.
Good to see you. Hang in there.
Thanks, Frank. You too. And for more information on the ongoing crisis in Ukraine, you can visit our website. There's a lot of content there you can peruse. ubs.com/views is that website. Podcasts, videos, and lots of written articles as well. You can also follow UBS on social media where the story continues. There are content pieces on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Plus, you can check out all of our past UBS Trending episodes on demand. And as always, if you have any questions about your own portfolio, make sure to speak with a financial advisor. Until next time, I'm Anthony Pastore. Have a great day, everyone, and remember to keep your eyes on what's trending. We will see you soon.